In an alternate NBA universe, this 2021 offseason was supposed to be a time when people should have been talking about how Giannis Antetokounmpo was going to fit in with his new team, whether it be the Miami Heat or maybe the Dallas Mavericks. But last summer, the Greek Freak instead chose to sign a 5-year supermax extension with the Bucks, and fast forward to the 2021 postseason, Giannis capped it all off by leading Milwaukee to its first NBA title in 50 years. And this actually might be the first offseason wherein much of the key pieces from Milwaukee's roster had been given credit for an extended period of time. Because I mean, for the first 8 off seasons of his career, Giannis spent most of his time listening to all the criticisms about how he could never lead the team to an NBA title. Khris Middleton and Jrue Holiday listened to a lot of people claiming that they aren't good enough to become second or third options in a championship team, and Brook Lopez was told that he was too big or too slow to be a championship level NBA starter. And I mean, all the doubts regarding these guys should have been erased by their NBA championship run, but the truth is, some fans still discredited what this team has accomplished for a lot of reasons, which include citing injuries to Kyrie Irving or Trae Young or whatever. Still, the fact remains that Giannis just put up one of the most historic finals performances of all time, averaging more than 35 points, more than 13 rebounds, more than 5 assists, more than a steal and a block per game, and Khris Middleton and Jrue Holiday also proved game in and game out that they can come up clutch in an NBA Finals series, and all those kinds of things are what really led this team to where they are right now. And so, entering the 2021 to 2022 season, the only question remaining is, under new circumstances, can the Bucks actually do it again and win back-to-back championships? So what's good guys, it's Real Balls here, and in this video, despite all the betting odds and all the preseason disrespect they've been receiving, I'll tell you why I think it's actually very possible for the Milwaukee Bucks to win the 2022 NBA championship. So let's get to it. The Milwaukee Bucks for sure are far from being favorites to win the 2022 NBA championship, at least based on the betting odds and the general narratives thrown out there by the media. Well, for sure, the sheer talent that the Brooklyn Nets have and the flashiness of the Lakers' new roster could very well explain the situation with the championship odds, but I think it's still a bit strange that currently Milwaukee's odds at plus 900 is much closer to Golden State's plus 1100 instead of being closer to that of the Nets or the Lakers, who are at plus 200 and plus 400. Well, for sure, this could be due to the fact that the Eastern Conference is arguably gonna be more competitive and much healthier this time around, but the thing is, the Bucks are also pretty much gonna be bringing back 7 out of the top 8 players whom they played the most in the playoffs, and even with Donte Divincenzo possibly still missing some time at the start of the season, the team will still be bringing back 78.8% of all the total playoff minutes that they've used in their championship run, with the minutes of PJ Tucker and Bryn Forbes basically the only ones likely to be replaced, which means Milwaukee will just be enjoying a whole lot of continuity next season. And aside from that, I also think the Bucks are also going to be a much deeper team this time around because of the additions of Grayson Allen, George Hill, Rodney Hood, and Semi Ojeleye, who I think are really underrated offseason acquisitions. But yeah, to be fair, a deeper roster doesn't necessarily mean a better roster, because you definitely have to consider how the team could replace the defensive versatility that PJ Tucker brought to the table, and especially with some expected stronger competition in the Eastern Conference, you definitely want someone else from the team to step up. While Khris Middleton could start to look like a total superstar, or maybe Jrue Holiday becomes an all-star again, or maybe Bobby Portis becomes the 6th man of the year candidate. I mean, we can only speculate for now, but the point is, there are just a lot of new possibilities for this Milwaukee team, especially with the championship experience and the new pieces they've acquired. So for now, let's look at how all of these potentially contribute to the team's title defense. Well, first of all, I honestly think this current Bucks roster gives Giannis the most spacing he's ever had as a superstar player ever, and this could actually be a huge difference maker for the team. I mean, during the 2020 to 2021 regular season, Milwaukee ranked 4th in 3-point shooting, making 39% of the team's 3-point attempts after ranking only 14th and 17th during the previous 2 seasons. But the thing is, their outside shooting fell to 32% in the playoffs once PJ Tucker replaced Divincenzo in the lineup. Cause basically, teams just hid some of their bad defenders on Tucker since he just doesn't shoot a lot of threes and is also not exactly a good shooter. But I think this is something that the team would be able to address right at the very start of the season, with Grayson Allen potentially filling in for Divincenzo in the starting lineup. Well, the thing is, last season, according to Basketball Index, the 5-man starting unit of Giannis, Jrue Holiday, Khris Middleton, Brook Lopez, and Divincenzo outscored opponents by 10.7 points over a total of 1,138 possessions, which ranks Milwaukee's starting unit in the 73rd percentile among all NBA starting lineups. Which lineup also produced 118.8 points per 100 possessions, which puts them in the 66th percentile of the league, and those rankings basically give Milwaukee starting 5 above league average numbers. And with Grayson Allen potentially replacing Divincenzo in the starting lineup temporarily, I think Milwaukee's offense could even improve statistically. Cause last season, Grayson Allen converted 39% of all his threes and 5.5 attempts per game for Memphis, which is a slightly higher percentage than that of Divincenzo's 37.9% and 5.2 attempts per game. And further, Grayson Allen also took an average of 10.4 3-point attempts per 100 possessions last season, which would have made him the highest volume shooter in Milwaukee's NBA Finals rotation. And aside from their floor spacing abilities, both Divincenzo and Allen pretty much share the same qualities as players. I mean, they can pretty much handle the ball, create from the pick and roll, and attack closeouts at the same rate, and they also pretty much have the same athletic capabilities on the defensive end. So with that, I think the Bucks starting lineup with Grayson Allen should pretty much be held to a similar standard if they're indeed gonna start him. And again, having this kind of floor spacing should also make Giannis' life substantially easier in the playoffs, as according to Basketball Index, Milwaukee's playoff starting lineup with PJ Tucker in it only ranked in the 55th percentile in terms of floor spacing, but their lineup jumps to the 76th percentile once you replace PJ Tucker with Grayson Allen. So I mean, if Giannis can score 50 points while essentially playing 4-on-5 on offense, just imagine how much more he can produce or create when he's surrounded with optimal floor spacing. And I think this is also where you'll see the value of the George Hill signing. I mean, there are some people saying that George Hill ain't worth the 2-year $8 million deal Milwaukee signed him to, which was probably because of the limited games he played last season for OKC and Philadelphia. But I mean, if you would remember back in the 2019 to 2020 season when Hill was also with the Bucks, Mike Budenholzer used to play him in 2-point guard lineups with Eric Bledsoe, and this was actually a season wherein George Hill led the league in 3-point shooting percentage at 46%. Well, for sure, it's very unlikely that the guy goes that high again next season, but if he was able to do that next to Eric Bledsoe, just imagine how better he can become next to a more potent offensive threat and a championship-winning guard in Jrue Holiday in potential 2-point guard lineups. And further, having another ball handler for the Bucks should also give Jrue Holiday more freedom to work off the ball on offense, cause I mean, who knows, maybe Jrue would have been able to get his groove on against Brooklyn in the second round if only he was given more reps off the ball. And also, George Hill's solid outside shooting and his good size and wingspan for a point guard will also enable the Bucks to highlight Jrue Holiday's ability to guard more 2s or 3s on defense, which should give Milwaukee more flexibility with their lineups on both ends of the floor. So overall, I really feel like the Bucks got much deeper with their roster this time around, and even with Rodney Hood, who's been overlooked because of him coming fresh off the worst statistical season of his career, the Bucks are still getting a 36.7% career outside shooter who should also bring solid closeout defense, who should also fit in with almost any lineup that Milwaukee chooses to play. So at this point, I think the only hanging question, at least for me, in terms of how the Bucks can go back-to-back is how much defensive versatility they can bring to the postseason. Well, I mean, Coach Budenholzer's Bucks teams have always been at the top of the league in terms of defensive team rankings, but last season, Milwaukee only ranked number 9 in regular season defense, mainly because Coach Bud actually prioritized defensive experimentation with a lot of switching schemes, wherein we saw a lot of times when Giannis played the 5 and when guys like Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis defended the perimeter more often, which was very different from the drop coverage based defense they've usually played in 2019 and 2020. But the thing is, all these experimentations resulted in Milwaukee having a 106.8 playoff defensive rating, which ranked first among all playoff teams, which ultimately led them to winning an NBA championship. So I mean, at this point, we should probably trust Coach Bud in terms of knowing what kind of defensive scheme to deploy, whether it be in the regular season or in the playoffs. Well, at least in the regular season, I personally wouldn't be worried about their defense because they routinely managed to stay on top of defensive rankings even without PJ Tucker before, and I'd even go as far as saying that I think Milwaukee could really have the league's best defense next season, cause I mean, Philadelphia would most likely regress without Ben Simmons, the Lakers have 2 of the best help defenders in basketball but their perimeter defense still looks suspect, the Knicks might also regress defensively without Reggie Bullock and Alfred Payton, and we also know how much the Jazz suffers when Rudy Gobert is placed in a not so ideal situation. But for sure, I think it's in the playoffs when PJ Tucker's departure could have possible implications considering all the toughness that the guy brings on his matchups, and especially considering that the Bucks' main small ball lineup of Holiday, Pat Connaughton, Middleton, PJ Tucker, and with Giannis at the 5 actually forced opponents to a 16.8 turnover percentage in the playoffs, which puts such lineup in the 95th percentile, making them basically the most switchable 5-man lineup in last season's playoffs. Well, for sure, Semi Ojeleye might be seen as the obvious choice to fill in for PJ Tucker's role in small ball lineups, cause it's 6'6" with the same build and same defense first mentality as as Tucker, he should be able to bring size and toughness as a switchable defender for the Bucks. While Ojeleye shot 37% from deep for Boston last season, so he should at least be able to cover for Tucker at least offensively in those small ball lineups. But of course, on defense, we have yet to see if he'd be able to really step up and bring the same type of aggressiveness and toughness that PJ Tucker had when defending a guy like Kevin Durant. Well, personally, I think either one of Giannis or Middleton would be able to defend KD just as well as PJ Tucker did, but I think the question is how much of that would affect both guys offensively. I mean, will Giannis be able to score 40 points while simultaneously preventing Durant from doing so, or does having a healthy Kyrie Irving or James Harden suddenly make guarding KD an easier task considering that there will be less isolation time for him? I think these are the types of defensive questions that the Bucks need to figure out heading into the playoffs in order for their goal of winning back-to-back be more realistic. But one thing is for sure, and that is a lot of people are counting out Milwaukee's ability to repeat next season, which I think is actually a ridiculous thing to do considering that the Bucks probably now have a deeper roster, and considering that they have one of the best all-around players in the world in Giannis, whose game is still constantly evolving and who isn't even in his prime yet. So do you guys think Milwaukee can win back-to-back championships? Feel free to drop your thoughts in the comment section below, and also if you do enjoy these types of content, please make sure to give this video a like as it definitely helps the channel a lot. Again, this is Reroll Balls and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.